In a New York City courtroom this morning, Judge Juan Merchan handed down the sentence of an unconditional discharge to President Trump. This means no jail time or any other punishment, and many believe the conviction will eventually be thrown out on appeal. It will be thrown out on appeal. Mark my words. It's going to be thrown out on appeal. It actually stands a very decent chance of being thrown out by the New York appellate court right above this guy, Merchan. And I believe the New York State Court of Appeals, this is eventually going away. So enjoy it while you can. You can say convicted felon right after you refer to him as Mr. President. And it will be a limited period of months. And then it will get reversed. And
man, the things I'm about to show you are just absolutely wild. Everyone needs to see how New York's court system orchestrated this whole thing for one reason: to slap a felon label on Trump before the election. But this isn't just about Trump anymore. This is about how our justice system has become a weapon for political theater. The pattern is right here, and once you see it, so you can't unsee it. Let's dig into this together.
So will that label, and you helped get him elected. So with this lawfare, I hope that makes you feel good at night. I'm not exactly sure why the Democrats feel so smug about this. None of this stopped the prosecutor of Donald Trump in the New York State Supreme case, Joshua Steinglass, from droning on. This man is ridiculous about just how terrible of a man he thinks Donald Trump is. Watch.
The defendant's conduct before, during, and after this trial also merits consideration. Instead of preserving, protecting, and defending our constitutionally established system of criminal justice, the defendant, the once and future President of the United States, has engaged in a coordinated campaign to undermine its legitimacy. Far from expressing any kind of remorse for his criminal conduct, the defendant has purposefully bred disdain for our judicial institutions and the rule of law. Such threats are designed to have a chilling effect, to intimidate those who have the responsibility to enforce our laws. Put simply, this defendant has caused enduring damage to public perception of the criminal justice system and has placed officers of the court in harm's way. Sentencing the defendant permits this court to enter judgment, to cement the defendant's status as a convicted felon.
And that's what it was all about. The nerve of this guy to say it's Donald Trump who caused damage to the institution, to the court, to the justice system, with his reaction to this case. The absolute nerve.
Hold up a second. Did this prosecutor seriously just... the absolute nerve to claim Trump damaged the justice system when they rushed this entire case through and ignored every legal precedent? And for what? Just to get that felon label before the election. This is exactly what we've been exposing about how the system works. They weaponize the courts, then blame the target for undermining them. Every single time. Watch what Megyn reveals next.
Talk about putting the cart before the horse. You, sir, are to blame for all of that. You! Donald Trump called it out for the joke, the absolute insulting joke of a proceeding that it was. You caused the lack of trust in an institution that had been mostly previously respected. Even President Biden, when he pardoned his son Hunter, called out how he doesn't trust the justice system. So please spare me. This whole thing was rushed to sentencing by a judge who was determined to be able to call Trump a convicted felon for that reason only, because it's been about politics from the start. These losers wrapping themselves in sanctimony. Alvin Bragg was out there, the will of the jury must be heard. Must be done. Who am I to interfere with the jury process? The judge too. We're just like public service servants who have to do what the jury said. Otherwise, it'd be a real insult. Give me a break. You two orchestrated this from the beginning. You've been working hand in hand to make sure you could just get this label on him. You wanted it so much earlier. I know, sweethearts. It was so important. You desperately wanted it earlier so that maybe it could affect the election. But you failed. You got your conviction. No one gave a shit. Even the left-wing media recognized that this case was a joke. So you failed utterly in doing anything other than creating sympathy for Donald Trump and making yourselves look like idiots. And then rather than just saying like, let's walk it back, we've had enough embarrassment, you rushed to try to get this declaration as though it was going to be meaningful. And it means nothing other than you've additionally irritated the next president. Let's see how that works out for you. I look forward to watching it, frankly. And probably created more sympathy for many people in looking at Trump, seeing how unfair this is. You know, you got CNN's top legal analyst saying this whole thing is unconstitutional. These charges are probably unconstitutional. Okay, so it's not going well for you, Mr. Steinglass, or for you, Judge Merchan. In addition to making this sentencing hearing happen, which didn't have to, and Steinglass and his boss, Alvin Bragg, pursuing it all the way up to the Supreme Court because Trump tried to stop the sentencing, saying for the same reasons you can't try a president for official acts because he's immune thanks to that Supreme Court ruling. You can't come after a president-elect like this and make him sit for sentencing. He's got other things he's got to do for the nation. And ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court said in a ruling, no, we're going to let this play out. The harm to you is minimal. It was Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts who did not side with the four other conservatives, costing Trump that decision. She's getting more and more like Roberts every day, and that's not a good thing. In any event, so he had to sit for it, and he had to be sentenced. But that's why they wanted it so desperately today. There was no reason. Judge Merchan had said, I'm not going to impose jail time. Like he telegraphed. It's basically, I'm just going to slap him on the wrist. The whole point of doing this was so that we can call him a convicted felon. We really...
No way. You seeing this? They just told on themselves. No jail time, no real punishment, just a desperate rush to get that felon label. Y'all need to understand this pattern we keep exposing. Step 1, rush a political case. Step 2, ignore normal procedures. Step 3, get the label you want. Step 4, use it for election messaging. The system isn't even pretending to be fair anymore.
Really work so hard to be able to call him a convicted felon. So that's what we're going to do. So, okay, you got it. Now, President Trump was allowed to appear over Zoom, which is unusual. That's great. Thank you for accommodating the next president of the United States. He's down there meeting with Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, all of whom have come in and bent the knee. Do it. Good. Jeff Bezos left his prostitute-looking wife for 2 minutes, or soon to be, to go over and bend the knee. Have you seen the pictures of this woman down in St. Bart? I'm sorry, she dresses like a prostitute. They're all bending the knee for Donald Trump. So he's busy, Judge Merchan. He doesn't have a whole lot of shit ton of time to deal with you and your political theater. But he appeared via Zoom, and then the judge did something he hasn't done before in this whole process, adding to the theater, which was he released the audio. That's how we just got to hear Steinglass. None of this thing was on camera or on audio, remember? We didn't get to hear audio of Stormy Daniels. We saw the sketch artist painting of her as she took the stand. But today, Judge Merchan really, he waxed poetic about the case from the bench. And I think he knew he was going to say something truly profound that America would want to hear. And maybe they'd want to hear Steinglass talk about what a shit Trump is and what like a really important case this was and how poorly the justice system has been treated by Trump. So they released the audio. Meantime, that included the audio of Donald Trump, who was participating in the whole thing from Florida, where he said that he is completely innocent and that this case was a political witch hunt from the start. Watch.
It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong. They talked about business records, and the business records were extremely accurately counted. I had nothing to do with them. That was done by an accountant. This has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before. And I'd just like to explain that I was treated very, very unfairly.
Judge Merchan, who, again, he could have done this not at all. He could have done this with no audio, or he could have done this, if necessary, after Trump's presidency, but no, rushed it on. He could have given the evil Trump, who interfered with an election. That's what Steinglass said. He made this from a stupid business records case in which he wrote down legal expenses for money he gave to a lawyer to make a nasty complainant go away. That sounds like a legal expense to me. They turned it from a business records case into a hush money case into a federal election interference case, one that the feds refused to bring. He could have given him up to 4 years in prison. That's serious business. You interfere with an election. The scheme that he was actually accused of, lying to the American public, committing fraud so that they wouldn't know what they were electing. It was all lies. All of it was freaking lies. So, but if you follow their logic, he deserved 4 years in prison, right? So why did we have a DA go in there and say, I consent that there should be no prison time? Because they had to. They had to in order to get this thing held before the inauguration, because they knew Trump would appeal it. And one of the reasons the Supreme Court said, we're not going to hear this right now. We're kind of not interested. Trump can take this case up on appeal. By the way, it's going to be reversed. They didn't say that, but I'm sure it will be. One of the reasons the Supreme Court said, we're not going to take it right now, there's no urgency, is because they said, look, the judge is telegraphing he's not getting any jail time, so we don't need to get involved yet. So that's why the prosecutor and the judge were both like, there'll be no prison time. Please let us hold our hearing in which we get to label him. We want the big CF label. Don't interfere. Okay, so he could have given him 4 years in prison. He said in advance he wouldn't, and he didn't. And he said he was distinguishing between Trump, the citizen, and Trump, the president.
To be clear, the protections afforded the office of the president are not a mitigating factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way. The protections are, however, a legal mandate which, pursuant to the rule of law, this court must respect and follow. This court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office.
Oh,
thank you.
Please. Fuck you. Sorry. Give me a break. I wish you Godspeed. Bullshit. This is such a farce.
Well, listen, you guys, what we just watched isn't just another Trump case. This is the entire justice system exposing itself. They rushed the timing. They ignored precedent. They even released the audio today just for maximum media impact. But here's the thing. This isn't just happening in New York. This is happening everywhere the system thinks it can weaponize courts for political purposes. They don't care about justice anymore. They care about labels and headlines. If you're ready to expose more of these system failures, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop "Courts Exposed" in the comments if you're tired of watching our justice system become a political weapon. We're just getting started.